Good evening, everyone. It's Al with Longoria House Dog Training, and here we are again. It's another Wednesday night, another question and answer show. Hey, thanks so much for watching this. I appreciate each and every one of you guys. And hey, if you're watching this after the fact, would you mind doing me a favor? Would you go down to that share button down below and share this with your friends? You know, maybe they're having some issues with their dogs. Maybe they're needing some help, but it's a fantastic way for them to be able to get the help that they're needing. But hey, for all you guys that are watching, I really appreciate each and every one of y'all. As always, if you have any questions, if there's anything that I can help, anything that I can do to bring you value to help you raise a happy and reliable dog, please drop your questions down below. I would love to hear what they are. I've got quite a few questions for tonight. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 questions that I've already got that I want to go over with you guys. But hey, at any point, if you want to chime in, ask any questions, maybe get some clarification, then you can definitely feel free to do that. Well, I'm going to go ahead and get started. So the very first question that I got, it was actually not really a question, but really a scenario that a person was in. So here it is. How do you teach a dog to play when they don't play with toys? This is a really interesting thing. You know, every dog comes from wolves, and wolves naturally understand how to play. And so the first thing I'm going to tell you is yes, every single dog that we own is capable of play. What does happen a lot of times with dogs is that whenever they actually leave their canine families and they come into their human families, sometimes, obviously they're coming from breeders, sometimes they're coming from worse situations than that, sometimes maybe they rescue, whatever. But what ends up happening with those dogs is they end up forgetting, or not learning how to play together with humans. So if you have a dog that's older or somewhat older, there's still ways to teach your dog how to play, even if they don't know how. The single easiest way is to actually just begin to have them play with their food. Here's what I would recommend to anybody that's wanting to do this. First and foremost, I probably would take away the dog's food or the ability to eat out of a bowl for a week if you wanted to begin to make some change in the dog learning how to play. And the easiest way that you could go about with the dog, teaching them how to begin to play, is with a very simple treat toss game. That's where you're going to take their kibble, you're going to put it into your hand, you're going to entice them with it, and if the dog is interested, throw a piece of it on the floor. As they go and chase after it, make sure that in a very excited voice that you're speaking with them and showing them that, hey, you're trying to have fun with them. They might be a little bit reserved in the beginning when they're doing that, but I just think it's important you take that food, kind of shake it in your hand a little bit, tease them with it a little bit, and then throw the food on the floor. And then keep doing that. Keep throwing one piece of food on the floor at a time, as it's a game for the dog, and you're going to begin to see that your dog is going to have, some drive, and it's going to begin to pounce a little bit, going to begin to bite on those, and those are the things that play is actually made out of. Now, if that's not your dog, if you say, hey, Al, I bring the food to my dog's mouth, and my dog is like, I'm not really all that interested, this is a great time to introduce something novel to your dog that they've never had. Head down to your local pet store, ask them what are some of their most unique things. I even went to a pet store the other day and I saw kangaroo treats. So you would get the kangaroo, you'd get some kangaroo treats, and then you would begin to toss those on the ground to be able to show the dog, like, oh, hey, we're playing a game. That's really the first step. It's going to be a little different for each and every dog, but I want you to begin to toss food on the ground. There's no goal on this game other than for the dog to begin to have a good time and to begin to chase after that food. Now, how do you begin to teach them to play with toys once you've gone through a couple of weeks of throwing treats on the floor and they're getting their dinner that way? You actually begin to get a ball, and actually I have one right here. These are balls that we use quite a few of. This one's a little used up right here, but this is an everlasting treat ball, I believe is the name. And what we do is in this cavity right here, it doesn't come with a rope. We're going to put treats inside of that cavity. When I do that, after I've been playing this treat toss game, your dog is going to smell the food that it's been chasing for the past couple of weeks, and it's going to do everything that it can to go ahead and try to get the food out of that ball. As your dog, like Gabby right here, trying to get the ball from me, as your dog begins to go and get in there, they're going to begin to roll that ball around, and then the food is going to begin to fall out of it. What should happen is there should be some very strong associations in the dog's brain telling it that, oh, okay, first I was chasing all this food, and now I'm actually chasing after this ball, and the food is falling out. Eventually, you should be able to roll that ball. How long is this going to take? Well, some dogs it's very quick, but I've seen some dogs that this process could actually take a month. Now, let's just say that you don't have this problem. You just got a brand new puppy, and you're wanting them to make sure that they have high toy drive. So what I do with my puppies to really help instill this in them is I have them inside their playpen, and then I literally put food on the floor of their playpen, and I have the toys right there. And this is a type of conditioning that every day that the dog has the food, that they're eating the food off the floor and the toys are around, they will eventually begin to associate directly back to the toys that are in there and begin to play with those as well. So that's a really good thing to do if your dog doesn't have the strongest genetics or maybe has just forgotten how to go about playing. But those are the first two steps that I would take. I would be very patient but very diligent. It could take up to a month, but I would do it every single day. Hey, I saw a couple of questions come up. I don't want to miss anybody's question, so I'm going to scroll back. Let me just jump on my iPad to see the first question that I missed. I saw something about a flirt pole, but let me see if I can grab that. Hey, thanks again, everybody that's tuning in tonight. Really appreciate each and every one of you guys. Okay, so Doug. Hey, Doug, thanks so much for watching tonight, man. Really appreciate you. And hey, thanks so much for ordering a flirt pole. So how do you get the dog to bite the leather lure strap on the flirt pole rather than the rope? You know, it all boils down to technique is the way that I do it. I know a little bit about your dog, okay, and the breed of dog. I believe you have a Doberman. So one thing that I would ask you to do is I want you to get a training partner or at least somebody that can hold the dog. I want your dog to actually be inside of a harness, and then I want the person that's holding them to have them on a line. And it's very important that you tease the dog when they're in the harness and the line is completely taut loaded into the harness. What's very important for whoever is handling the flirt pole, the leather rag at the end of the flirt pole needs to be the thing that moves the most, okay? So what I do, this is a little complicated, but I'm going to try to be as clear as possible. You want the person that's handling the leash to really be very stationary with the line going to the harness that's loading across the front of the dog's chest. And then you want to whip the leather rag right in front, but right out of reach of the dog. So the dog would be here and the leather rag would be going back and forth, teasing the dog, okay? And so then you're going to see the drive of the dog begin to come up. And as the dog is coming up and drive, then you're going to bring the leather rag close enough so the dog can bite it. When the dog bites it, this is when you want to play tug, because that's actually what's going to make the association to tell the dog that, hey, that's the absolute best thing that you can do, okay? Start with that. Come back to me in a week and let me know how that's going, okay? So hope that works for you. Gabby, for whatever reason, just started chasing her tail over here. What are you doing? You're acting crazy. You know, and it's funny. I tell people all the time, you know, the problems that you guys have with your dogs, you know, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I'm perfect, but I'm definitely going to tell you that, hey, you know, my dogs, they have issues too. I'm doing this live show. They're supposed to be in downstays. And Gabby's just, look, she's about to knock my light over. She almost knocked the light over right there. But, you know, dogs are going to be dogs. And, you know, there's no way that it can be absolutely perfect, you know, each time that you're going to ask your dog to do something. This is why I train. We train so much with the dogs so that way they can be reliable. But even then, they might not be all that reliable. Hey, give me just a second as I fix this light, because if I have it here the entire time, I'm going to go blind. So I'll come back to some questions in just a second. The light's about to smash down on my camera. And there, I got it. Great. So filming live is always a lot of fun. So, but yeah, you could have a dog knock over your light all of a sudden, and that's not going to be any fun. All right, so let's come down to the next one. All right, so hey Cam, hope you're doing well. We're having an issue with Henry being mouthy with guests because he gets so excited. He tends to put his mouth on our guest's hand and forearm. I have to put him on the stairs to give people time to come in and for him to calm down a bit. But still, once he's released, he tries to mouth them, hand or forearm. Ugh. Any ideas? Yeah, I have a lot of ideas, and I know your guy quite a bit. It really is a maturity thing, unfortunately, for him. There's not going to be like a really quick fix. Yeah, you definitely could make associations that when you mouth that we're going to tell you no. But what I'll tell you is you're probably going to see the biggest difference in him over the next 6 months. But I think that maybe for the next month or so, like don't release him to come and interact with people. Have everything always going back to him. One thing that I look for, okay, and especially the dogs like Henry, okay, I want him to get rewarded, and he needs to get rewarded by people, by people that are coming over to your home. The main thing that I would do is I would have everybody that's going to reward Henry when it's the right time to reward him with a treat or a piece of food. And as they're rewarding him with the food, putting the food to his mouth, and then actually stroking his back as they're doing that. It's okay if they don't do it perfectly, but it's really important. It's really important that they don't go in just for the petting, because what he's going to understand is that, oh, you pet me, I interpret that as a sign of play, and then yes, I need to begin to become mouthy and get the dog to, hey, I want to initiate some play. There are some other ways that you can do this that involve playing tug with him, but I would tell you for him that once he calms down, have people actually bring food to his mouth, and as he's eating, petting them. That's probably going to be the most meaningful thing that you're going to be able to do. I would keep him in his place while you have people over. Once you see him that he's calmed down considerably on his place, then I would ask him to come off, and then I would ask him to actually begin to interact with people in a way that's fun. So one thing that I recommend for anybody that's watching this, if you have a dog that's mouthy like this, one additional thing that I do is if they come off and they still have some excitement and you happen to have some food, begin to show the dog how to do tricks. Because if you do that, then the mouth is really going to focus in on, oh, I got to do the skill and then I'm going to get rewarded, as opposed to thinking like, hey, I'm going to come over here and mouth these humans up to see if they'll play with me. Sometimes dogs will bite you just to get attention because they want to play, even if it means that you're telling them no. They're going to say like, hey, I want engagement. So some very simple tricks you can teach your dog, and I'm going to be demonstrating these in the next couple of weeks, is teaching your dog how to spin, teaching your dog how to twirl, and maybe even teaching your dog how to walk backwards are some really cool things that you can do. They're actually going to get the dog to engage with the human, and where they're less likely to use their mouth. But if it's an ongoing problem where the dog doesn't do it, then it is important that we share with him that, hey, you're not allowed to put your mouth on our guest, and you will get in trouble for doing that. But I definitely would try to direct him, because of his young age, I would try to direct him in a way that he can understand that, hey, this is the way that I need to be interacting with people. So I would go there. All right. So, hey, Matt, you've got a couple questions. Hey, Matt, thanks so much for joining in tonight. I appreciate the question. Hi, Al. Our new dog started playing with the others that we have, which is great. The only problem is sometimes they play too much. How do we let them play, but cut it off when it gets too much? Well, I'm going to tell you this, okay? I raise dogs a lot differently than most people do. And I understand the need for having, your dog play with other dogs. I'm going to tell you how I handle it, and then I'm going to try to give you some practical advice to be able to help you in this situation. So, number one, when I get a dog, they're allowed to play with the other dogs in my family up until the time they're about 4 months of age. And then I stop all play. My dog actually stops playing with all dogs until they're roughly 2 years of age. And it varies. I make the decision from dog to dog when I'm going to give them the play back. During that time period between 4 months and 24 months, I'm going to be building a very intense relationship where the dog is always really focusing on me and learning how to do that. While I'm doing that, I'm also teaching the dog that you have to defer to me when I'm dealing with my other dogs. I think it's just a really important thing to teach the dogs how to do that. Okay, so I've seen the technique that I'm going to describe to you next, but I've never used it, okay, because of the way that I raise my dogs. So what a lot of people end up doing with these dogs is they actually use a lunge, not a lunge line, but it's kind of like it's a horse whip, but you're not going to use it to whip your dog. It's basically a very, very long pole. And when your dogs are in the backyard and they begin to get a little bit out of hand, you're going to use that pole and you're going to put it in between the dogs and begin to create space between them and get them to actually calm down a little bit. The pole is just served to be a nice extension of you and to get the dog to move away. Because realistically, if you're in the backyard, you've just got your voice and you've got your limbs, how can you practically, without some kind of tool, create the space? Because it can run faster than you. You can't grab their collars in time to be able to make a meaningful thing. So really having this kind of long line and doing that. Now, I'll tell you, I love to teach this to a dog where I will get one dog to stay and another dog to be interacting and playing with me and doing that, because that is really going to teach your dog how to respect you, and then you can let them out together and the dogs will be so focused on you that they don't really even care about each other. That's how I go about it. But using a long line, I'll see if I can bring some value. Maybe I'll post a link to what I'm talking about after the live show is over. But I'll post a link to this tool, but then I would use that tool to create some separation between the dogs. And once they actually chill out, then I would let them begin to play again. So that's something that might be able to help. All right, Doug, you had something else? So I need to get a harness and a volunteer to work with us. Yeah, that's absolutely right, Doug. Get a buddy, get a harness. You want to be very careful with the harness. It's going to be any traditional harness. Just make sure that it doesn't clip to the front, that it has a wide chest plate, okay, and it has a good solid ring on the back. If you need some suggestions, send me a message. I'd love to let you know what I use. Hey, as a matter of fact, we just had a picture. I'm pretty sure it's on Facebook and on Instagram. It's a post this week, and you're going to see Gabby inside of a pink harness. That's the harness that I would use. If you look on the side of it, it's going to say the name brand of the harness that we were using. You can go look them up. They're on Amazon. They're pretty affordable, but it's a really great harness that you can use to build that for the dog. Hey Kim, you're very welcome. I hope that helps. Okay, yeah, and let me know if that works out for you guys. And hey Matt, you're very welcome too, man. Appreciate you. All right, well, hey Tanya, thank you so very much for the question. So here's what you got. We got a doggy doorbell to help teach potty training. We put treats on the surface of the bell. They lick the bell, but don't push it with their nose or hit it with their paw to make it go off. How do we get them to push it hard enough to activate the bell? Oh, I love this one. This is such a great question, Tanya. Well, Tanya, so this is a matter of motivation, right? Hey, you started on a really nice path by showing them that the treat's actually literally going to be on the bell, and then they tap it, or they tap it and they get the treat. But now you need to create a disconnect between tapping and receiving the treat, because all the dog sees right now, it doesn't really see the bell, it just really focuses in on the food. So what you're going to do, and this is best done with a clicker, you're going to take the bell and hold it in one hand. So it's going to come down your hand. You're going to be holding the bell in your hand right here. And here's going to be the really hard part. You're going to have to become patient. As you're sitting there holding the bell, you really honestly just need to wait until the dog's nose taps the end of the bell. If your dog barely even touches it, then you're going to reach back into your treat pouch and grab the food. Hey, this is really simple for me to tell you, but I'm telling you right now, it requires patience, and I would prefer not to talk. I want the dog to use the totality of its brain while it's trying to figure this out. Here's some things that can make it easier for you. Make sure that your dog is particularly hungry. Maybe give it a couple of pieces of something new that it really likes, something kind of novel, to say like, hey, we're about to do something. And then stick that thing out there, stare at the very tip of the thing that you want the dog to touch, make sure that it's about the level of where the dog's nose is, and then as soon as the dog's nose taps it, Then you're going to reach into your pouch and you're going to grab your food. I would also recommend using a clicker for this. That's going to add a third step. So you'll see the dog, they're going to tap it with their nose. The moment you tap, it's going to be click. And then once you've clicked, that's when you would reach into your pouch to give them the food. Now, let me put it into the context of the potty training. Your dog already has to know to use the restroom outside. Once your dog knows how to use the restroom outside and you've taught the dog how to tap the bell on the door, then what you do is the next time the dog has to potty, you take the bell, which they've previously learned by tapping it, you take the bell, put it in front of them. When they tap it, instead of going back and reaching for a treat, you open the door and you say, go potty. Your dog should race out the door to go use the restroom. If it didn't, one of those two things is missing. The dog either doesn't understand that it should potty or isn't really finished understanding how to tap the bell. But your dog has to have knowing where it should go and also knowing that I tap the bell and that creates the reward. That's how I would go about teaching that. All right. Well, guys, hey, thanks so much for the questions so far. I'm going to take a quick sip. Hey, really appreciate each and every one of you guys that's joining in tonight. Hey, if you could do me a favor, I would really appreciate if you would go down to the corner right there and hit that share button. You know, as a small business owner, we actually, you know, my family survives on your word of mouth, you sharing our content. You know, how easy can it be to share what you're learning tonight just by hitting that share button, and then your friends can see it. You can maybe send it to one, but I can't tell you what it means to me when you share this. So hey, thank you for sharing if you already have. Thank you to everybody that's watching. I really appreciate you, and I appreciate your attention. Okay, so I'm going to go over the next thing that I have on the list is potty training. You know, what are the basics? So the basics in potty training, here's the number one thing that you need in the potty training. Where specifically in your yard or on your walk do you want the dog to use the restroom? If you don't know, if you can't answer that by looking, I want it in this 3 foot by 3 foot area, then it's going to be very difficult for your dog to find out. And if you don't know and the dog doesn't know, then it becomes virtually impossible for you to tell them that's right. That is one huge component of potty training is do you actually know where you want the dog to use the restroom? Does your dog actually know where you want it to use the restroom? And have you told them that's the best place to go? Now, one area that a lot of dog trainers don't talk about in potty training is, does your dog actually know how to hold it? One of the big problems that I see with dogs that are struggling is that there is free water out, free food and water out for these untrained dogs. And, you know, it doesn't, you know, obviously you guys can imagine if you have food and water out, that's what drives the system, and your dog is so bound to make a mistake if that's the case that it's living in. So please, if your dog is having potty issues, make sure that there's no food and water on the floor to begin with, and then also make sure, do I specifically know where my dog should go, and have I convinced them that it's really good? So when I actually give my dogs food and water, and maybe they've been irresponsible, they don't know, how do I teach them to hold it? It's pretty simple. You need a crate about the size of the dog, okay? Now you can buy a big wireframe crate. A lot of those come with metal dividers, and you would stick the metal divider in there, and then the dog should just have enough space in there to be able to lie down with a small area, okay? It's not gonna be like that permanently, but it does need to be like that in the beginning. So you give food and water to your dog, you're gonna put them into the crate, and then you need to begin to guess, how long should I make them hold it? It is important that they begin to have the thoughts that, hey, I need to use the restroom, but I don't wanna go inside of this area. As they're holding it, and they'll begin to whine to tell you, this is then the perfect time to take them out with your leash to that specific spot in your yard that you want them to go. Now, I'm going to go into a little bit different direction. A lot of folks struggle with this on their leash walks. people want their dogs to, they ask me, hey Al, when is my dog allowed to sniff and to potty when we're going on our walks? Because your rules to walking are pretty rigid. Well, yeah, the rules in my walks are rigid, but that doesn't mean that your dog doesn't get to sniff or doesn't get to potty. So when you're walking with your dog, where along in the pathway that you're going is your dog's restroom, that your dog is allowed to do that. Now, what I like to do with very young dogs is as I'm walking them, when we get to the potty area, right before we get there, I ask my dog to sit. I ask for their attention, for them to look back up at me, and then I lead them to the potty area and I give them plenty of time to use the restroom. When they use it, I say, hey, that's great. I make them feel wonderful for using the restroom where I want them to go, and I begin to develop that routine. As soon as they're done pottying and I'm done rewarding them, then I'm quickly going to tell my dog the command to move with me again, which is let's go. And as we begin to move, I go back into showing the dog how to respect the leash. But those are really the basics. Does your dog know where to go? Do you know, does the dog know where to go? How are you making it clear to them that this is the place that you want them to be? And then two, are you showing them that they must defer to you first before they pull you into the area to use the restroom? And I think those are going to be some very useful tips for you to help you get the most out of your potty training with your dog. All right, what's next? And hey, thanks so much for all you guys watching. Hey Maria, thanks for tuning in tonight. Hey Maria, good to see you. Brian, thanks for tuning in, man. Really appreciate you. Hey Paola, if you're still here, thanks for joining in. Mandy, thanks for joining in tonight. Appreciate you. Okay. So, I've been dealing with a lot of jumping dogs lately. So how do you get ahead of it? How can you get ahead of your dog jumping? The problem with jumping is it is fundamentally rewarding for your dog. Your dog, when it was 2 weeks old, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks, all it did was jump and pounce on all the other dogs. That's what it knew. It could jump on mom, and mom didn't really care if you jumped because you were so little. But now you come into, your puppy, your dog has come into a human household, and it still wants to jump because that's what's worked for the last month and a half. So now what do? Well, one very, very simple thing that I do, and many of you guys know this, is I hand feed my dogs. So as I'm hand feeding my dogs, what I'm especially careful about is that when I have food in my hand and my dog is jumping up to get the food, I'll lower my hand, to the ground, and then I will literally count to 3 in my head before I open my hand to give them food. This is a very powerful technique, but timing is everything here. If your dog just jumped, you brought the food to their nose, you lower them, and you feed them all in order, your dog is going to learn to continue to jump on you. But what I like to do, like I said, is maybe they jump on me. Maybe I get them to get off of me by bringing food to their nose or by pushing them off, either one of those. And then when they're on the ground, I wait till they've been there for 3 seconds with all their paws on the ground. And then I let them have some of the food. But here's another way that you could get ahead of jumping problems before they actually come up. Lower the dog and make sure you put no reward on at least within 3 to 5 seconds of them jumping on you, but begin to play the game that I mentioned back at the beginning of this episode, is throwing food on the floor and making sure that you're never throwing it in the air, that you're throwing it underhanded and the dog is just chasing the food along your floor, and it's going to stay and it's going to pounce on the ground, but it's not going to be throwing those jumps up. If you practice that, that's a great time to practice coming when called and associating the dog's name as you're tossing treats back and forth onto the floor, but it's going to really eliminate a lot of that jumping and teach the dog that, all the reward is on the ground. But if your dog jumps on you and you have food in your hand and you lower them and immediately give them food, unfortunately, that's going to tell your dog to jump more on you. But this is the way that I like to get ahead of dogs, jumping on me, is by teaching that all the reward is on the ground level. Okay, so what's next? Well, I have it here and I'm trying to think about what I was thinking about when I wrote it. So next up on the list is just do it. Here on this show, we talk a lot about different techniques and different things that you can do. We talk about leashes, we talk about food, we talk about treats, we talk about clickers, and all these different techniques that I want to share with you guys. But really what it boils down to in the end, guys, is just you have to train. One of the most commonly asked questions that I get is, Al, how many hours am I going to have to spend training my dog? And the real answer is, it's going to be pretty high. There's going to be a lot of hours involved in training your dogs. One question that I push back with every time that somebody says, hey, how many hours am I going to have to train my dog? And then I just ask them if they're parents. I'm like, well, how many hours are you going to have to parent today? And then everybody's just like, well, okay, I get it. You're going to have to raise and own your dog just the same way that you would raise or parent your children or work with your employees or any kind of relationship you're in. There really isn't an answer to how many hours that you're going to have to work. You're really going to have to work until they understand the thing that you want them to do, okay? One thing that I like to practice is I like to practice my dog training as part of my lifestyle as opposed to a session. Now, let me give some clarification. I actually teach my dogs new things in a training session. This is where I've eliminated all the distractions. I've got everything that they could possibly want. I've got a way to show them that, yes, you do have to listen to me. And then I begin to show them what it is that I want to show them without any distractions. Once they understand, and we've done some sessions like that, and they can show me that they have some aptitude for this thing that I'm trying to teach them, then what I do is I begin to make it real. I begin to practice in reality. I begin to add those distractions and add those things that are going to come into my everyday life. The doorbell ringing, me dropping food on the floor, a dog going, a dog walking by, or whatever it is, whatever's going on in your lives. And then I show the dog how to use that skill to do it. But I just tell you, you just have to do it. You have to get out there. You have to get involved. It doesn't take a number of hours. It's just the type of thing that you have to repeatedly and willingly do to raise your dog. What you'll find on this pathway of training your dog, on this path of training your dog, is at some point you're going to look over, you're going to see the dog right there, and you're going to be like, wow, he actually understands what it is that I want. And I'm looking at Fritz. He's lying down right there. He's my 8-year-old dog, and he knows what I want him to do. He knows how to do those things. And I don't know what day that he figured it out, but you could see that as we were living together that he began to figure out the things that he was doing just because I spent the time with him. All right, guys. Well, hey, thanks everybody again for watching. Let's see how we're doing on time. All right, 30 minutes. I'm doing pretty good. I'm probably going to go for another 15 minutes or so. If any of you guys have any questions right now, please feel free to ask. I'd love to hear any questions. What's going on in your life? What's going on with your dogs? What new and exciting things that you're doing? Okay. So here's the next one. Okay. I really want you to keep a leash on your dog. I just see it over and over that, your friends are walking into the door, I'm walking into the door, or, your husband, your wife, your kids, any of these folks are walking in the door and there's your dog, they're out of control, and then we begin to yell, and it's just so utterly ineffective. And it just frustrates us. It frustrates me just as much as it frustrates you. So really what I want to tell you is keep a leash on your dog. Keep a leash on your dog when they're inside their home. And yes, they're probably going to chew it up. Okay, but here's the big but, and here's the big bonus. If you have a leash on your dog whenever the doorbell rings, it's going to make it so much easier to begin to tell the dog what you actually want it to do. Now, there's going to come a time and a place where you can actually take the leash off the dog and they're going to understand the thing that you want. But realistically, it's several thousand repetitions into its life before it's going to have an understanding of, hey, this is what I'm being asked to do. But here's what another thing that I'll tell you. We all want to talk to our dogs. We want to give voice commands because it's so easy for us to speak. But if you use your leash in conjunction with your talking, your dog is going to understand your words even better, and they're going to become more powerful. And that's going to be very useful from a long-term thing. I understand it's a hassle to have a leash on the dog, but it's a bigger hassle not to have one on there. You know, how do you teach the dog that when the front door is open and you step out the door, that we didn't want you to do that? And it's virtually impossible unless there's some kind of leash on the dog. And this is a big one, because I'll tell you, dogs die all the time because they bolt out of doors. And it breaks my heart when it happens, and it's so preventable. All you literally have to do is have a leash on the dog, open the door, let them go out, and convince them with your leash that you didn't want them to do that. And then test their knowledge each and every time you go out. Open the door, see if they go out. If they don't go out and they held themselves without you saying a word, then you get to reward them. But then if you open the door and they bolt out, you're like, I just saved your life. Now get your butt back in here before you get in trouble. Because nobody wants to lose a dog. It's such a hard thing to lose your dog, and your leash can be such an important thing to be able to help your dog with that. I hope that's helpful, guys, and it kind of gets me charged up. But it's just so important for us to be able to lead our dogs effectively, where they actually understand what we're saying. And if you have your leash in hand and you speak at the same time, it's just going to go a long way to helping you raise the dog that you've always wanted. So, how do you know when you can take that piece of equipment off? This is another good question. It's not so easy to tell, but here's the real answer. Let's just say that you've been working on coming when called with your dog for some time. You've done the treat toss game, you've put the associations in, your dog has made the mistake of not coming, they've gotten in trouble for that, you're going through the process, and here they are. You started training, the day that you got them at 8 weeks old, and here they are, they're a year and a half old. How do you know if it's time to take all this equipment off your dog? Here's how you know. The equipment's on your dog. A very big distraction enters the environment, the distraction that that almost always gets your dog, and you ask the dog to do the thing that you want it to do, and your dog shows, I'm going to defer to you and do the thing that you want, and then you don't use a single one of your tools other than the power of your voice. If you can do that, and you can repeat that several times, not thousands, 20, 30 times, this is when you begin to think about taking some of those pieces of equipment off, because you didn't use it to get what you wanted. But on the way there, you're going to need it. Sometimes you don't use it, sometimes you do use it. You got to keep it a little random as your dog is figuring it out. Hey, what am I really supposed to do? But that's the thing. The equipment can come off whenever the dog really, truly understands what it is. When I compete with my dogs, we're not allowed to have any equipment on there. But I'll tell you this, when I'm riding a competition dog, I have my equipment on the dog the day before the competition, because I want my dog, if they have a moment of being unsure that, oh, hey, I want to see if what he told me yesterday is still true, and then they test it and it's still true, then they believe, and the next day when I compete, they're like, okay, things are still the way that he's always told me they are. I believe that. And then they actually respond accordingly, just like we do. We're going to respond the very same way. So you can take that equipment off when you've actually given the command to your dog for the thing that you wanted to do in the presence of the biggest distraction, and they respond unwaveringly. That's the true answer. All right, here's the next one. My dog keeps lunging. How do I teach them to stay? So this was for the kind of dog that, I saw this dog inside of one of the homes that I'm working in, and the dog was actually tethered off. And when I walked by the dog aggressively lunged at me, trying to bite my leg, trying to get to me. And so you're like, man, how in the world do we keep the dog from doing that? Well, it really is about setting effective boundaries for the dog and them understanding that. It's really pretty amazing that this dog that I saw that was lunging and trying to bite people, that now it's been 4 weeks since I actually witnessed that the dog is actually in a much, much different state of mind, okay? So one thing, if your dog is the kind of dog that is aggressive and is lunging at people when they're on their line, the first thing that I want you to do for your own peace of mind is I want you to get you a muzzle, and I want you to muzzle train your dog, okay? This muzzle training is really important. Now, yes, I know it carries a stigma, but forget the stigma, because that muzzle is set to protect you and to protect your dog from the mistake. Because here's the reality in our culture, in our society. In America, if your dog bites people, we kill those dogs. And sometimes unnecessarily, where it just really took the dog understanding what it's supposed to do. So if your dog is lunging, don't be afraid of getting a muzzle. And yes, people are going to judge you, but forget them, okay? Forget those people that are going to judge you because your dog is wearing a muzzle. You're doing the best thing for your dog by helping them and preventing them from making the mistake that could actually cost them their life. So now, the very basic answer that really helps you, that really helps you teach a dog how to stay, is place training and stay training. I love the elevated beds. I'm never going to stop talking about them because they literally save dogs' lives. I don't know how many hundreds of dogs have probably saved their lives that were aggressive and dangerous because we did place training and we did remote collar training with them. But here is what it boils down to. If your dog is lunging, you need a leash. It needs to stay on them. You need to begin to immediately feed them all their food for being on their place. If they're staying on their place, you show them that this is such a wonderful place. And then you begin to nip it in the bud for the dog, that you say, we're not only going to prevent you from lunging and becoming aggressive, we're going to set the no for you even taking a step off the bed. You got to nip it in the bud right there, because if you don't, then it only grows. And then the amount of you having to tell the dog no and the yelling and all that ugly, nasty stuff that none of us want to do, it goes up. But if you nip it in the bud, that the dog steps off and you're like, hey, I don't appreciate you doing that. You're going to have to go back and become calm. And then when they're calm, you begin to direct massive amounts of reward at the dog. The dog's going to understand the difference. It's so much easier to nip things in the bud rather than just waiting for the emergency to happen and then trying to stop that. I always tell people it's real easy to put out a little kitchen fire than it is to put out a house fire. Kitchen fire is real easy. I've got my fire extinguisher right over there. If it gets a little hand, I spray it, it's done. House fire, you're going to lose a lot. And a dog that's lunging at the end of the line, that's a house fire. And it's going to take a lot to do it. But if you begin to nip it in the bud in that daily practice when the dog actually is calm, it's going to go a long way to actually changing their behaviors. So, the muzzle training is a must. The place training is a must. And I would tell you, for your own sake, the remote collar training is going to be so beneficial because it's the fastest way that I've seen over the years to get the dog back into a calmer state of mind where they're actually going to understand that, okay, I get rewarded for being calm, and my owner doesn't put up with me ever becoming dangerous to any creature or any human, period. All right, guys, here we go with our next one. Let's grab some more water. All right, so here's another one. Here's another really good topic right here. Getting through a tantrum and why it's so hard. Tantrums are tough. Tantrums are tough. I know, I walked into a home just a couple of days ago, and when I walked in the home, the owner wanted to show me all the different destructive things that the dog had done. The dog was chewing on all the windowsills. The dog was tearing up, newspaper. The dog was peeing on the really nice rug. The dog was doing all of these things, all these bad things. So I see all that. And then I go to put a leash on the dog. And it was just so amazing. I put the leash on the dog, and right after I did that, it was like one of those bucking broncos that you see in like an old Western. I've got this line on the dog, and the dog's just throwing this massive tantrum. And I'll tell you, I've been seeing dogs throw tantrums for years now when I put a leash on them for the first time. And I always look over at the eyes of the people at the eyes of the people as their dog is in the middle of the tantrum. And so many people become so worried about the dog, like, oh my gosh, what's happening to my poor dog? And that's the thing that gets us. That's the thing that actually gets us, and it's a trap. When you see your dog throwing that tantrum, that you put the leash and they throw themselves on the floor, that they turn into this bucking bronco, that they begin to bite the leash, okay? It's hard because nobody likes to see their dogs doing that. And then what we normally do is either we let go of the leash, or like they're biting it, we let go. We let go and say, hey, it's okay for you to bite the leash. I don't mind that. Well, it's not okay for the dog to throw a tantrum. And the technique for it actually requires something special out of us as adults. And as an adult, with a dog, a kid that's throwing a tantrum, well, especially with a dog, when the leash goes taut, and I'm not saying tight like strangling or anything like that, but it goes taut on the dog, that leash absolutely, positively does not relax until the dog is done with its tantrum. Because if you decide to apply pressure on the leash, the dog throws the tantrum and is in the middle of the tantrum, and then you let go of the leash, guess what's going to happen? The dog's brain is going to say, that's the answer. Throw more tantrums. That's it. That's exactly what's going to happen to your dog if you do that. So it's hard. It is actually hard when the dog is in the middle of throwing a tantrum. But what I would tell you is the thing that you're looking for from your dog when it's in the middle of that tantrum, because the leash is on them, your dog has to go 100% calm, and then only after the dog becomes 100% calm can the leash relax. You don't need to make it tight. It does need to stay taut the entire time the dog is throwing the tantrum. But it doesn't, you're not trying to choke the dog or any of those things. It just needs to stay taut because this is you trying to have a normal, very normal dialogue with the dog. You're not yelling, you're not excited, you're just nice and calm. And once the dog actually de-escalates and becomes calm, then you simply get to relax and the dog can understand that, oh, okay. And guess what? You're probably going to have to repeat it a few times to the dog so that way they can begin to understand that, hey, I've got to become calm whenever they put the leash on me, as opposed to turning into a bronco that's dragging you out the door, down the neighborhood, into the street, and into a fight with another dog. All right, so now on a little bit lighter note, on something different, I have here, what is your favorite treat to give your dogs? You know, I like to surprise them. I don't, I treat them all the time, honestly, okay? And my dogs are so in love with their dog food. If you could see the ritual that Gabby goes through and how excited she gets for her food, it's hilarious, okay? Really, it's pretty funny, all the things that we go. But really, my favorite treat is the novel one for the dog. So I've got a couple of novel things here that I like to introduce, but really, I think I just got one. I picked this up the other day because I was thinking about this show tonight and what I was going to do. And so one of the things that I like to do that's kind of interesting for the dog is I like to do something like this. That's some almond butter. Now this almond butter, I don't know if you can see the top there, it's real liquidy up there, and it can be very, very messy if you're doing something like that. But what I like to do with the almond butter is I like to put inside of a toy, if you guys can see that, this is a Kong. I like to put the almond butter inside of the Kong, and then once I've done that, I really enjoy freezing that and making my dog go to their place, and then I like to get them to work out the frozen Kong. One additional thing that I do as a treat for my dogs is when I do something like almond butter and I get them and I load it in there, I'll actually load dog food. This is Origin Puppy. I'll load Origin Puppy and the almond butter into a bowl, and I'll make it its own crunchy peanut butter or almond butter, load it in there and freeze it. And I think that can be a really fantastic treat to be able to give a dog that's super novel. And there's so many different ways that you can use it. I've used the Kong in a lot of unique different ways with my dogs over the years. But that's one way. You could give almond butter mixed in with their food, and that can actually do great. Hey, Doug, I saw that you had a question. I was matched with my dog for therapy work. He is going to be great at it. His temperament is outstanding. He's 2 years old. He's great with seniors, kids, and other dogs. But he's a high drive and high energy. It seems like he needs a job. Do you think protection or Schutzhund work will have a negative impact on his development for therapy work? How do I find the line between therapy work and protection work? He's evenly tempered. I think he can do both, as most well-trained dogs should be, but was curious on your thoughts. It really does depend. You really need to get, a good, somebody that has a lot of experience in both things, in both therapy and also in protection dogs, and to really evaluate your dog. But, a lot of it goes back is, how is your dog's on-off switch? If your dog genetically doesn't have a great on-off switch, are you showing him how to contain his excitement? Really, what I'll tell you that I like to do is I like to bring my dogs up into the highest state of their drive to where they couldn't be in higher drive. And then I like to whisper commands to them when they're pretty far along in their training to see how well they're still going to respond to my voice. And that's so important to me, is the ability to be able to speak softly to my dog in those moments when they're in very high drive, and to see what they do with it. Not every dog can do that. What I see from dogs a lot of times, they go into high drive, is that you see all this leaky behavior. And what I mean by leaky behavior is there might be some whining, there might be some other jittery behaviors from the dog that they're not really understanding that, hey, like, hey, I don't know how to actually control this. You can train that, but you really don't want to, like a dog that you want to do therapy work with, you don't want to do a lot of training to teach them how to cap their drive, like how to bring all that drive down. You want to see that they naturally have an ability to be able to do that. But you want to see them, like you said here, you want to see that somewhere between 2 and 3 years of age. But then what I would also ask myself in my mind is, who is my dog and what is best for him? Are you going to give him a better life if he goes and does the protection dog thing? Or are you going to give him a better life if he gets to be a Velcro dog, snuggling and comforting people? And then what I would do is I would heavily focus on one area or the other instead of trying to take him both ways. Most dual-purpose dogs, and I don't want to use like the military's dual-purpose dogs, but a dog that maybe does agility and maybe does therapy dog work, those two things are on opposite ends of the spectrum, and not every dog is going to be able to handle those well. Most dogs will maybe be better at one thing, or maybe one thing or the other. But for me personally, if I could give any more advice, is what does my tug relationship look like with the dog? If we have a really good tug relationship, my dog has good outs, my dog has shown that they're very good with people, then I would be inclined to maybe go in both directions. So, hey, I hope that provides you some value, but without actually working together with you and your dog, it's a little difficult for me to give you the best context possible. But hey, thanks so much for the question. Well, guys, I don't have much else on my list. Does anybody have any parting thoughts or parting questions that they want to ask? I hope this has been really useful for you. Like, hey, if for those of you guys that are still watching, it would mean the world to me if you would go down there and share my content. Each and every time that you share my content, it helps spread the word. It helps put, food on the table for my family. And I just can't tell you that I appreciate you. I honestly appreciate each and every one of you guys that shares my content, that engages with us. It means a lot to me and my family and my employees. We depend on that. But hey, I want to continue to bring you excellent content. We've got some really new and exciting things that are coming up here in the future. I can't wait to show you guys what I have coming up. Yeah, I can't wait to show you guys, but some cool stuff is coming up here in the very near future as we continue to push the limits of what we can do. But hey, I'll go ahead and take this last question, Doug, and then we'll wrap up, okay? When we play tug, he drops when I tell him to. He gets after it and then turns off when told to. Hey man, that's a great sign. That's a great sign that your dog is understanding that. Just, keep working that. And tug is a fantastic way for him to understand how to do, how to turn off and turn on. And then also teaching him how to play tug with somebody else where you're giving the voice commands. That's essentially protection work at a very basic level. And will he listen to you? I always like that if you're playing tug with a dog, and he's playing tug with somebody else and he's not listening to you, that's where you have to begin to get concerned. Like, hey, why won't my dog listen? And are you communicating in a way that he understands? All right, last thing, and we'll wrap up, okay? So I live in Iowa. We'll be in Texas in January with our mutual friends. Would like to set up a training session. Hey, man, whenever you get down, we can make it happen. Just let me know when you're down here, and I'd love to meet you and your dog. Well, hey, guys, thank you so very much. Appreciate each and every one of y'all for tuning in tonight. God bless you. We will be back in 2 weeks. No live show. If you're celebrating Halloween, have a happy Halloween. Enjoy your kiddos. Enjoy their costumes. Hey, have a great night, and we'll talk to you later.